welcome everybody to DevConf. I've said this many times, but this is truly a special conference for me personally. I've been at the first one. I've seen it grow all the way to this massive conference that it is at the moment. So it's always been a special conference for me. And it is a real honor to be here and share some experiences with you guys. Now, full disclaimer, my title has changed a little bit over time, but I will get into the details of it. But let's just cover my topic first. It's from overheating to overachieving, or mainly just hacking cars. But I tend to try and focus a little bit more on the subtitle, I think, which is a comedic tale of trying to hack my car. And that gets me to my first change that I've actually needed to make, is just adding the word trying. But in a lot of ways, that is where the fun lies, is trying these things out. So that's hopefully the underlining message that I want to try and convey today. But from there, it got a little bit worse. Playing with cars, unfortunately, is a little bit expensive. So my comedic tale quickly went to tragic, but in my opinion, still useful. And then it just kind of just went to blowing stuff up. Not everything we blew up, but quite a lot has. So yeah, unfortunately. And depending if you're here from an insurance company or not, I might just be anonymous. But by way of introduction, my name is Rudi Grobler. I'm a developer at Lightstone. Hopefully, it's completely clear that neither hacking nor cars is my day-to-day job. I work, like I said, for Lightstone, who's a company that specializes in data and analytic products for the property segment or the auto segment. So day-to-day developer for them. But I have been developing software for quite a while. And although not quite evident with my talk today, I do actually have a little bit of experience of how to reverse engineer things. I have done similar things in the past, so hopefully at least the idea here will translate, I hope. But maybe more importantly is my disclaimers. I'm definitely not a mechanic. I'm also definitely not an auto electrician. And yes, both of these would have been extremely useful up front, and I should have better consulted them all up front. I'll give that immediately. But that being said, I do believe there's a little bit of value in trying to attack a problem that is not your day-to-day thing. So somewhere outside of your comfort zone, you attack the problem from a different angle. And a lot of companies are actually trying to use this technique. So companies, specifically in the Elon Musk genre of companies, but companies like SpaceX, Boring Company, Hyperloop, all of these companies are having these competitions occasionally where they try and solve a specific problem. And that means you get people that are not typically in that space. So SpaceX, as a specific example, would want to hire rocket scientists, obviously. But the competition isn't just open to rocket scientists. So you get the different perspective on a common problem. There's even, it's not a developer-related thing, but currently they're looking for people that haven't watched Star Wars to watch all of the Star Wars and get an opinion about where that story should go next. So a lot of people are actually trying this idea of tackling a common problem from a different perspective. And hopefully that is what will result here. Now, my problem wasn't that difficult. I had a car. And notice that I said had a car because I do not have it anymore. But it wasn't anything special. It wasn't a great car. It's a Renault Kwid 2017 model. It's a relatively old car. But I do have a son turning 18 soon. So I thought, well, maybe I'll give the car to him, or maybe he can sell the car or do something with it, whatever he wants to do next. Now, this car, for all its good or bad, had one really irritating problem. It had many problems, but it had one specific irritating problem, and that is that it kept on overheating. And it wasn't exactly like I didn't try and fix it. Yes, disclaimer again, I could have fixed this better up front, but it has a common theme to it. If you look at its dashboard, that is its actual dashboard. It is relatively okay, nice big letters, great for old people like me, pretty colors, all of these kind of things. But nowhere on this thing does it actually tell you what the temperature of your car is. And that is a thing that happens in modern cars as well. They have high heat gauges, but then they will tell you it's cold, it's okay, you're in trouble. But by the time you get into you're in trouble, it's already too late. And this car also has a light that actually tells you you're in trouble. But this light uses color to distinguish between not in trouble and really in trouble, and I'm colorblind, so it didn't help me a lot. But I thought, well, maybe I can get the temperature somehow, show it somewhere. It has a crappy dashboard, but it has a decent media center in the middle, so I thought, well, maybe I can repurpose this. And because my problem wasn't that difficult, I thought my solution for this, or the plan for this, should also reflect that. Because really, how hard can it be to talk to your car? It's not an unsolvable problem. It's not a massively complicated problem. It is something that is quite doable. So I thought to myself, well, maybe I'll try and hack the car. And I use this term in inverted commas a little bit because it is a slightly overloaded. But all I mean by hack the car is being able to ask it some questions. Should I be able to ask it questions? I can ask it questions like, how hot are you? How fast am I going? Whatever else I want to ask the car, I can ask it some questions. And then hopefully show it somewhere. Now this goal was very loose because it could have been a telephone inside the car, it could have been on the dashboard, or it could be on the media center. I didn't really have an exact plan of where I want to show it, but just show it somewhere. And it wasn't exactly like I did not try and solve the problem. Again, yes, I could have done this better, but I had it at multiple places. One place replaced the water pump for me. That helped me a little bit. Another place told me it's a foreign car. The diagnostic process of this is quite difficult. They don't want to try it. I had it back at the company that I actually bought it from. They gave it back to me twice, and both times it failed on the way home. Then my absolute worst experience was a company that told me, the problem is simple. Your car is overheating, so just replace all the water parts. Radiator, hoses, the caps, the water pump, everything. And that was just simply not good enough for me. So I do have to give a shout out though, as I did find a mechanic that was eventually able to help me and actually take the thing apart and try and find my problem. But by this time, it was really, really too late. But again, I did find somebody willing to help. Now, obviously, things went wrong a little bit over time here. And like Iron Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And that is a little bit true here as well. But hopefully we'll learn a little bit out of this, and hopefully I can share some of this knowledge. But ironically, he is 57 years old and he's trying to fight again. So maybe you never learn, but still, we'll see. Now, the meat of this is just how would you hack a car? But just take it a step back. How would you hack anything? The process, although, yes, in my case, it was specific to cars, the method used could be translated into almost anything. But as far as cars is concerned, it turns out to be a very easy way. And it was actually so easy that I overlooked it in a lot of ways. And then there's harder ways, all the way to very, very hard. But if we take cars just specifically, they have a very common set of problems. It doesn't matter if it's a fancy car like this one or an old car like mine, they all have similar types of problems they're trying to solve, or at least cars manufactured after roughly about 2000. They have these devices inside them, devices that need to operate discreetly. So something like your brakes or your engine controller or your steering wheel or your whatever else in your car. These devices need to be able to work, but they also share information with each other, okay? And they need a way of sharing this information, because that is a common theme to this, is they have to share the data across the whole car. So what car manufacturers did is they chose what is called Controller Area Network, or a CAN bus, which is just a message-based protocol. It's really, really simple. It's chosen because it's reliable, it's efficient, it's very, very fast, and also it's very, very cheap. If we break down CAN bus just a little bit more, CAN bus is just a very simple two-wire network. You can imagine two wires running from one end of your car to the other end of your car. There's termination resistors on each one of the ends to debalance the signal a little bit, but that's it. And then whatever you want, you can daisy chain off this network. And it is a trusted network. So once you're inside the car, okay, then you're already screwed. But inside this car, you can just daisy chain whatever else you want onto this network. And if you look at this little thing here, it's just two wires that is connecting to the dashboard over there. It is a really, really, really simple network. But like I said, the beauty of it is that you can daisy chain things into it. And one of the things that has been daisy chained in is the onboard diagnostic port, or the OBD port. Now this is a abstraction that sits on top of CAN that allows car manufacturers to see the error code. In my case, they actually told me, yeah, it's got hot, but it reset it afterwards, so it didn't help much. But either way, you can see that it at least gives you a code. And then also very important is you can get the CO2 level of the car, the emissions of the car. But you can think of OBD as a higher level abstraction that just sits on top of CAN. So in a lot of ways, OBD is like the language you speak, Afrikaans, English, Zulu, doesn't matter. And CAN bus is your actual thing you're speaking on, like your phone. And here there's the same problem. It's like Android or iOS, etc. But in essence, it's a language and it's a device that you speak on. And the beauty about the OBD port is that it is required by law, because cars get taxed around the amount of CO2 they produce. So government needs a way of measuring this, which means the OBD port, although the CAN bus messages can be different depending on your manufacturer, the OBD messages need to be standard. And if you look in your car, you will find a port that looks like this. It's a very standard port. You will easily see it in your car, either on the dashboard or on the driver's side. And you can even look inside it, you'll see little metal pieces, then you know which wires are connected or not. And like I said, this is an abstraction that sits away from the CAN bus, so it doesn't matter if it's a Renault or a BMW or a Ford, they all work the same way here. And that gets us to the easy way. And this is really where I should have stopped, but obviously did not. There's a very common chipset called the ELM327. It's a very cost-effective little device that you can buy. You get it in USB port, you get it in serial port, or you get it in Bluetooth devices like this. And it even has a little phone app like that. And it actually shows you the temperature. And not to state the obvious, but this is where I should have stopped, because that is mission completed. It's show the temperature on something inside my car. Yes, I'll get to that in a second. Now, to even illustrate how easy this thing is to work with, is once you actually connect it, it's a serial port. And if you recognize this device at the bottom here, it's old school 1980s modems. They use 80 haze commands. So this thing is just a translator that takes 80 haze commands and converts it to the OBD port, and the OBD port converts it to the CAN bus. Super easy. Designed in 1981, which means there is millions of examples in every language you can conceive of how to do this. Super easy. And yes, this is where I should have stopped. Among the many things that I did wrong is I once had the polarity of the thing wrong way around. I once had my Arduino plugged in the wrong way around. I blew up my ELM at one point. I blew up a piece of the OBD port at one point. So I've made some mistakes here. I'll give you that, but unfortunately, yeah, stuff happens sometimes. Now, if we take a look at that OBD port, now there's many ways to get inside your car's CAN bus, but one of the easy ways to get to your car's CAN bus is this OBD port actually has the ground and it has the battery voltage that comes out, but it also brings out the CAN high and the CAN low. So you can just plug into those two wires and you can see if your car has got CAN. Not all cars have got CAN, but you can see if it's got CAN. And I started slow. I used what is called a logic probe or a logic analyzer. I just plugged it into the CAN high and the CAN low bus messages, and I plugged it into my PC, and this thing starts jumping up and down, which means I can see that it is actually sending CAN messages. I don't know what it's sending yet. I don't know how fast or anything like that, but I at least know there's signals going up and down. This software is very clever, though. It has decoders, so you can turn on a decoder and it can figure out how fast the CAN bus messages are going. It can figure out what it's actually saying. So from here, it's actually off to the races. I knew that it spoke CAN. I knew the speed that it was going. So from here, it is theoretically easy. If you look at CAN, it is a very well-defined standard. Now, there is disclaimers here again. There's version 1, there's version 2, there's a high-speed one, there's a low-speed one. There is some variation here, but it's a very well-defined structure. It has some way of detecting the start of the frame. It has a way of detecting the end of the frame. It has the identifier, which is the important bit that we want to know, which is the device inside the card that you're actually talking with. And then it's got anything from 0 to 64 bytes of data. It's got some CRC to make sure that the data is correct. And it's got an ACK line also. So it's a very well-defined structure, and it's super easy to use. If we think of OBD now, just as for a second, remember that's the abstraction that sits on top of CAN. So now, all of a sudden, we can throw away the start bit and the end bit and the ACK and everything else, and we can just focus on the OBD messages. And they are quite simple. They use the identifier, and they have 8 bytes every single time. And the first byte in that 8 bytes just tells you how many bytes you're sending. The second one is the mode. I'll get to the mode in a second, but the mode is just, are you asking the card for some value of it? Are you asking it for a troubleshoot code, or asking it for something like the VIN number or the engine number? So there's different modes, but they're well defined. And then the PID, or the program ID, which is the register inside the car you're asking for. So stuff like vehicle speed, vehicle temperature, stuff like that. And like I said, the modes are well defined. There could be more, but in OBD standard, there's anything from mode 1 to mode 10, where 1 is get the value, mode 9 is getting stuff like the vehicle details. And again, then for the program IDs, also well defined, including the max and the min values and the calculation that you need to actually work out what that message means. So something like vehicle speed or temperature is actually quite easy to calculate. If we turn this into a more concrete example, we just have to identify the number of bytes, the mode, the PID, and then the rest is just padding. In my car's case, now this is not necessarily true for every car, but in my car's case, I send the message as identifier as 7DF, which just means I'm something that wants to know a message on the OBD port. I'm telling you that I'm sending 2 bytes. I'm telling you that I'm asking for mode number 1, and I'm telling you that I'm asking for message 0x0D. And turns out 0x0D is just vehicle speed in this case. It responds back as the ECU, or the onboard diagnostic port, 7E8. The details not important here. It's telling me that it's responding back with 3 bytes. It's telling me that it's responding back to message number 1 by just putting a 4 at the front of it. It's also telling me that it's responding back with the 0D response. And then it gives me back 0x35, which is just the hex value for the speed. Now, I don't have any prizes to give away, but you could easily guess what that is, or you could just use your calculator. 0x35 just converts to 53 kilometers per hour. Super easy. Now, although you have CAN controllers that can connect through Bluetooth or serial or USB, the typical way you do this is through the SPI bus, and most computers don't have SPI buses. So I tend to use Arduinos, something similar to this one over here. I've used various different ones, but basically used Arduinos. And if you look at the code, you don't have to look at the specifics of the code, but I'll just highlight some very high-level things. As you set up your CAN controller, and in the setup of the CAN controller, you just tell it you want to use the 500 megabits per second or the kilobits per second, so the speed of the CAN bus, and you also tell it what the crystal on the CAN bus controller is. Again, this is well documented, but it's easy to do. And then I have a small abstraction that just does that padding, and it knows how to set, I'm asking for 1 byte, I'm asking for the speed, whatever the case may be, and then you just listen to the response. And as soon as you get the response, you show it wherever you want to show it. And my idea with the Arduino was that I could potentially show it on the media center because that also has SPI bus, but phone would have also worked great in this case. But like anything in life, there's levels to this game. And the CAN bus messages, although the OBD ones are quite easy to do, as soon as you want to do something like this, where you want to change something on your dashboard or something like that, it becomes a little bit more difficult. And this is where the, again, quote unquote, hacking comes in. because in a lot of ways, that hacking is just, I'll get to the specifics of how to do it, but for now, the software I used to do this was called CanHacker. It's free software. Depending on what you want to pay, there's SavvyCam, there's Peak, there's Comma AI, there's many variations of the software, but it's a very simple piece of software. And it has a very simple piece of hardware that goes with it. You have your car on the left-hand side. Via the OBD port, it goes to the CAN bus controller. In my case, it was a MCP2515. Via the SPI bus, it goes to my Arduino. In this case, I used the Arduino Uno for a couple of reasons. I used the RP2040. You don't have to worry about the specifics. It's a Raspberry Pi chipset, and it has COM port emulation, which the software needs, but it's relatively simple to build. Now, even this thing, I'm a little bit worried I'm taking on the in the airplane, but my other board looked even worse. And this is purely an indication of my wiring skills. But essentially, on the right-hand side, you have the OBD port. From there, it goes to the CAN controller. From there, it goes to the Arduino. And from the Arduino, it goes to your PC. You just plug it into your card then and hope for the best. Don't plug it wrong way around, but you should be okay. And then, very much like a doctor does, it's not like a doctor, but almost like it, you just start poking at places and feeling out if it hurts or not. Kind of the same thing. In my case, I just had my car ignition at the off, and then I looked at the messages that it gave back, and I turned the ignition to the on, and you should notice there's more messages, but now you just look for the differences in the messages. You differentially diagnose the problem. And like Dr. House said, everybody lies, so you should be able to trust the hardware. Now here is where the irony in my whole situation is. My hardware also lied to me a little bit, but either way, lesson learned. But I thought, before I knew it lied to me, I thought, well, my plan is quite simple. I mean, the cooling system of a car isn't that complex. You have, I thought to myself, well, I'll take a COVID gun, almost like the temperature COVID gun, and I'll simply measure the temperature at the intake host, so I'll know that it's cold at the top. I'll measure the temperature at the outtake host, and that would hopefully tell me something. And if I'm lucky, I'm also able to get stuff like the coolant temperature or the oil temperature or something like that, or ambient temperature inside the engine or the intake temperature, and then do a little bit of math. And hopefully this should be in some sort of a range, and then I know that the thing works or it doesn't work. But this is where most of my issues actually came from, because my assumption was a little bit wrong. Ironically, the car has a thing called a thermostat, which tells the computer how hot it is. So even though I was able to read the temperature wasn't correct. So it didn't really help me at the end of the day, because, and to be fair, think about it. Even if I knew it was 98 degrees, I don't have another car like that I can see is 98 degrees good or bad. I don't know if 107 degrees is good or bad. I just knew I go into 107 degrees if I drive a little bit. And I know that the car turns off at 110 degrees. But I don't know if that's good or bad. So really, two faulty assumptions here led to some mistakes being made. But back to our CanHacker, and again, this is also true for anything else that you want to try and hack. You basically just keep track of, and this software, by the way, helps you to do this, but you keep track of the state, like the on and the off state, and you just look at the differences in the messages. The software gives you a bunch of other things, like the count of messages, so you can see that they're going relatively quick. It tells you the timing of it, so you can see that it goes 50 times a second, or 10 times a second, or every 5 seconds, it doesn't matter. And then very important for us is just the data bits and the identifier. And you just keep track of those, and you look at the differences. Now, this does not necessarily mean anything in this case, but if we just look at message 0x55D, when my car was off, the second byte was FF. And when my car was turned on, it turned to DF. Now, this might mean nothing, but in my case, I can make the assumption that that means that my car is turned on. And I would do the same thing for everything else. Press the brake pedal, put the car in reverse, wind down the windows, open the locks, turn the volume up and down on my car steering wheel. Anything I want, I just keep track of these changes. And then, if you want to try it, you just replay that message back to it. And if you've recorded something like the volume up and down, you should see your volume up and down on your car stereo go up and down. It's really simple from there. Now, the question I get asked specifically by family after I've blown up my car a little bit is just, why would you want to do this? I mean, is it just an interesting topic? Is there some real world case for this? And it turns out there's quite a lot of actual useful things you can do with this. Yes, in my case, I wanted to upgrade something specific in my car. I wanted to upgrade the dashboard, and I wanted to be able to show the temperature somewhere. But you could theoretically update anything in your car, your ABS brakes, your lane assistance, your anything else you want to do in the car. The second one I thought about, but only because my car isn't worth a lot, is that I was ending up using the Arduino Nano, and it has a Bluetooth chipset on it. So I thought to myself, well, maybe my phone can pair with the Bluetooth device. If I walk close to my car, it picks up that I'm there, and maybe it unlocks, something like that. Or maybe you want to do something like a biometric entry to your car, or keyless start, or anything like that. A lot of these possibilities are there. A big space in which it's also possible to use this is in electrical vehicles. So I have a friend that's busy converting a petrol car to an electric car, and there's a ton of these kind of things that you want to do inside those cars, including the battery management system. Think about it. When you charge it at night, you want to know when it's full. You want to stop your charger. You want to don't overuse your battery. You want to measure the temperature of the batteries. There's a lot of stuff that you want to do in electric space. Now, the bottom half of this is when you get really ambitious, by the way. Other things you can do with it is you can give your car just eyes to the front or eyes to the back. And if you're very brave and your car has got a steering wheel that you can control the steering angle, you can start doing semi-autonomous or fully autonomous driving. And there's software available from OpenPilot and a bunch of other ones available that you can use. So then you can start going a little bit deeper. Now, this is a little bit next level, but it is still possible. If your car has got something like this, the steering wheel that can turn, or maybe it's got LiDAR or something like that, you can even try doing stuff like park assist or lane detection or whatever else you want to do. And then from a business perspective, which a lot of people here probably are, is you can do predictive maintenance. So imagine this for a second. You've got a fleet of cars and you want to monitor them. You do care where the driver is and what they're doing, but you can look at other stuff as well. Is the car working harder to go up a hill as it used to 3 months ago? Is it using more petrol? You can detect these kind of subtle changes in the car's behavior, and then you can predict when it's supposed to go in for maintenance. So over and above just the 10,000 or the 15,000 kilometer service plan, you can also look at the data of the car, and you can actually detect that there's something wrong with the car. And hopefully you can predictively maintain your fleet of vehicles then. Now, a lot of stuff can go wrong, and a lot of stuff did go wrong with me. My car ended up looking like this. Among the things that happened is that there's a little pipe that goes from your car engine to your oil tank. My car got so hot that that pipe actually melted. So even that was a little bit one of the many, many things that can go wrong. And I wouldn't recommend starting with a car as your first thing that you want to try and hack, but the principles still hold true here. So I don't want to discourage you. There's also a lot of bad things you can do with this, so just be aware. This sneaky device that you see at the top right-hand corner, somebody figured out that the ECU always keeps track of the amount of kilometers that your car drives, but your dashboard shows it. So what they did is they just intercepted the messages in between those two, sent everything through as it would, but when it sends asking back for the kilometers driven, subtract 40,000 from the clock. And all of a sudden, your car has driven 40,000 kilometers more, but it shows 40,000 kilometers less. Okay, so very, very sneaky, but also possible. And then also from a security perspective, keep in mind that you're inside the car. It's a trusted network, so you're already there. But you can do some interesting things once you're inside that car. Because one of the things that it does is everybody can send at the same time on the network. So how does it know which one should it listen to? And the way it does it is through hardware arbitration. It looks at the lowest identifier first. So what you do is you can do a simple denial of service attack on yourself. Simply send random data to address identifier 0. And all of a sudden your car wouldn't know how to talk to the other devices. And your car will shut down. So think of this as from a sneaky police officer perspective. They put a car there that they want people to steal. The person steals the car. While they drive away, they shut down the car because they just simply turn off all the things inside the car. So there's a lot of interesting things you can do. Whoops, sorry. Now, yes, my results weren't perfect. I'll give you that. But this one here went a little bit smoother. So the more you try these kind of things, the easier it gets. And there is a ton of devices around you that you could potentially try and do. I don't know, anything. You want to show the load shedding schedule on your Chromecast. You want to know what your water meter is sending to the people, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of devices around you. And just by thinking a little bit, differentially diagnosing it, you can figure out what it's trying to do. So in a lot of ways, like Gary Player said, the harder I practice, the luckier I got. And that gets me to the end. I still have plenty of time for questions and answers, but I do want to leave you just with two things. First of all, I know there's a lot of sessions at the same time, so thank you for being here. I know there's a lot of selection, so being here, I do appreciate it. And then secondly, I'll leave this slide up a couple of seconds, but the speaker feedback, that QR code takes you to that. Please help us rate the sessions. Yes, I don't want to discourage you from giving good feedback, but trust me that even the bad feedback helps us make this better. It's the only way I can know that this message came across. It's the only way I can adjust for Cape Town as an example. And maybe something was unclear, or maybe I can send the message different. It also helps the organizers figure out how to do this better. So please rate the session, and any feedback is welcome, good or bad. And with that, I think I still have plenty of time, well, not plenty, but 7 minutes time for questions and answers, so go.
I just want to know, how the hell did the wheel fall?
It's part of, this place actually took the car out completely apart. They took wheels apart, they took the engine out, they took the oil tank out, they took everything out. So it didn't fall off, but having a mechanic that actually tries to look for the problem causes that.
On your diagram with the cooling,
Yes.
did you label the hot and cold incorrectly on purpose, or are you still learning how water flows?
Dude, I'm colorblind. Seriously. Does it matter? But yeah, look, even knowing that the temperature is going in or out didn't really help me. Knowing that it's cold or hot only really tells me that the radiator works, so it's only for illustrative purposes.
Were you able to display the temperature?
On the phone, yes. It didn't help me. I could get the temperature, but the bottom line is, it made no difference, so I could have just as well left it. Yes. No, the car blew up. I had to sell it for scrap metal, actually, so that's actually how bad it ended up. Any other questions? Well, with that, thank you very much, and please enjoy the rest of the conference.